If I was writing a cookbook, this recipe would definitely be in it. Part 9: Vegan Pumpkin Honeycomb Pasta. We are now in fall with Thanksgiving right around the corner, so this might be a great addition to your Thanksgiving meal for your vegan friends and family. With ingredients that you might already have on hand, you'll be able to create this simple and festive pasta dish. A few years ago, I had a Friendsgiving at our house, and I had some friends that were vegan and some that were not. And I made a vegan version of pumpkin manicotti and a regular version of pumpkin manicotti for everyone to share. I was happy to hear that I had friends that were vegan that loved this dish and friends that weren't vegan that actually tried both dishes and even preferred this one. So ever since then, I've loved having this in rotation. I don't know about you, but I have been seeing honeycomb pasta dishes popping up everywhere. And so that's how this recipe was formed. I was thinking, well, I wonder if I could make that with the pumpkin manicotti. And it turns out, yes, you can. So let's get into it. There's three components of this dish. You have the pasta part, you have the bechamel sauce, and then you have the pumpkin ricotta, but not ricotta, filling. I'm boiling 1 pound of large rigatoni pasta, and I'm using my food processor to make the tofu ricotta cheese. For the ricotta, you have to press 1 brick of tofu for about 10 minutes just to get out any excess moisture. In the food processor, you're going to add the tofu, half a cup of nutritional yeast, 1 teaspoon of garlic powder, and 1 teaspoon of onion powder. You're also going to add in 1 teaspoon of salt, half a teaspoon of pepper, and 1.5 tablespoons of olive oil, along with zest of half a lemon and juice of half that lemon, and half a teaspoon of crushed red pepper, but you could add more if you like it a little spicier. I added the sage later on, but you don't have to do that. You could just add it right now into the food processor. I don't know if you noticed the ridiculousness that's happening over there with the pasta. I chose the wrong size saucepan. I should have just got a big one so I could have done the whole pound of pasta at once. What was I thinking? Always choose the bigger bowl. I don't know why I can't remember that. That's advice I love to give to future me. When in doubt, choose the bigger bowl. I've been making this recipe now for over 6 years, and I did find the original version online for the vegan pumpkin manicotti, but I lost track of the website where I found it. So unfortunately, I can't link it below. But the inspiration came from somebody else. Over the years, I've changed, some of the measurements here and there, but the inspiration was found online somewhere. So I really like to cook, and I actually really like to cook for people with dietary restrictions. Now, I'm not a vegan. I don't really have any dietary restrictions except for raw celery. Ugh, I don't want that. But I do enjoy cooking for people who might be gluten free or vegan because it stretches me and it teaches me new recipes and techniques and ingredients that I wouldn't normally use. So I enjoy that. But I also recognize that not everybody does. And a recipe like this, which is not too technical and not too unusual or like foreign in its ingredients, might be a really good place for you to start. After I made my vegan ricotta in the food processor, I put it in a bowl and I mixed in a cup of pumpkin puree and half a teaspoon of nutmeg, a little bit more salt, half a teaspoon, and I put in chopped up sage leaves, 5 of them. And I guess technically I could have done all this in the food processor, but I chose not to, and I don't know why. Next, I took the filling and I'm putting it in a piping bag. I got these piping bags like years ago to make it was like hot chocolate little gift bags. I don't know, it was for Christmas. They were very cute, but I ordered 100 of them. And this is like one of the only recipes that I use those piping bags for. So I'm happy just to use another piping bag. So now that the piping bag is prepared, I put it off to the side and I'm going to start with my bechamel sauce. This too will go in the food processor. So you don't have to be too precise with chopping up the onions or the garlic that you're going to need for this part. So I put in my onions with some olive oil and I started to saute them. As you'll see later in the video, this portion of bechamel sauce is actually not enough. I wound up doubling it. So I'm going to give you the measurement for the doubled bechamel sauce. So altogether, you're going to need 2 yellow onions diced and 12 cloves of garlic minced. Now that is a lot of garlic. I love garlic, but if you just kind of like it the way a normal person likes it, you could do less. You could do between 6 or 12. I chose 12. You're also going to need 8 tablespoons of flour, 1 can of full fat coconut milk, 2 teaspoons of salt, black pepper, and also that same coconut can, that milk can, you're going to fill that with water. So I think that's like 14 ounces of water. Just take that can and you'll need that much of water to add. Now, this is not how I would typically make a bechamel sauce because you're supposed to start with butter and then flour and then very slowly whisk in the milk. But since this is all going to go in the food processor, I was just doing it more quickly and it turned out great. So last year around this time, I was talking with a new friend and she said that she was kind of nervous about Thanksgiving that year because her daughter had recently become vegan and she didn't know what to cook. I was overly excited to share that I had lots of recipes that might be helpful or useful to her, but I was surprised about how nervous she was because I haven't really shared in that nervous feeling before. Her concerns were that she has a handful of recipes that she knows how to make and she doesn't venture too far out too often to make new dishes, and she wasn't sure about exactly what vegan meant, what ingredients could be included, and she felt like maybe she wouldn't do a good job and her daughter would be disappointed. Now, that has not personally been my experience with my friends who are vegan that I've cooked for. In fact, everybody that I've cooked for that has a dietary restriction is just really thankful that you are willing to take the time and put in the effort to make foods that they can enjoy with everybody else. That's not to say that every person who has dietary restrictions is as gracious as the next, and I've definitely heard horror stories as well. But personally, I haven't experienced that. I think if you do your best to express to that person you would like to make sure that they felt included and maybe ask them what their definition of vegan or gluten-free is, that can maybe help you to understand what they can and can't have and take a little bit of the guesswork out of it. This was my first time making the manicotti recipe as the honeycomb pasta, so I did it a little differently than I normally would. I actually made 3 dishes, one in like a medium-sized springform pan, a small springform pan, and in a Pyrex dish. The reason is because I wanted to do some experiments about freezing and like serving it. And so that's why I have so many dishes. Normally, I would say you could just put it in one large springform pan. Now, after the bechamel sauce cooled down, I put in the food processor and blended it up. I started by putting a few tablespoons at the bottom of each of those dishes. I put the rigatoni, I cooked it al dente, and I lined them up, and then I piped in the pumpkin ricotta filling. And here you could see that I am topping it off with a few more tablespoons of the bechamel. I repeated that same process with the medium-sized springform pan and later on with the circular Pyrex dish that I also used. In some of the versions, I filled in each of those rigatoni with a lot of the ricotta filling, and in some versions with a little bit less, just to see the difference. I think what turned out best is the ones that were filled like halfway, because if you filled it all the way at the top as much as you could with the ricotta filling, the bechamel couldn't fall inside the rigatoni and make that signature honeycomb shape. I didn't know how many containers could be filled with the amount of ingredients I had. And this kind of reminded me of when I would make other filled pasta dishes. I inevitably would have more of one thing and too little of another. So here I had lots of pasta left over and I had lots of the filling left over, but I did not have a lot of the bechamel sauce. That's why I made that second batch of bechamel. So I put the two springform pans in the oven to bake. One of them will be frozen after being baked, and the other one is just going to be eaten tonight for dinner. Here's some unsolicited advice that I find helpful, and maybe you will too. I love cooking, and I've loved cooking now for many decades, but I used to still get stressed out even though I liked it. I often try new recipes and I really like to feed people at our house. So having people over for dinner is pretty typical. And what would happen sometimes is I would make a recipe and I wouldn't feel confident about how it tastes. I didn't test it out beforehand. And then I would be stressed out like the hours leading up to people coming over because I wasn't sure about how the recipe would turn out. So, what I began to do is sort the people that I would cook for into two categories. Some people I cook for are adventurous eaters and they love everything, or at the very least, they're pretty tolerant of everything. And so, those people I would try new recipes for. But there are other people who are a little bit more picky, or maybe I really wanted it to be something very special and I wanted to make sure that everything was just right. And for people in that category or events in that category, like a big holiday, I would test out the recipe beforehand. So Thanksgiving is a few weeks away, and I'm considering making this during Thanksgiving. And I know how the original recipe tasted, but I didn't know how it would come out with the honeycomb version. So that's why I'm trying it out. We're having it for dinner tonight, which is lovely. And so if I try it out, by the time Thanksgiving rolls around, I am way less stressed because I already know how it tastes and I know that it's good. So now for the 6 questions I ask about everything that I make. The first question is, how does it taste? This is great. It's really flavorful. And it's one of those things that might convert your tofu skeptics. Then I ask myself, can I make it in bulk? Yes, you can. And then after that, I ask myself, can you freeze it? And yes, you can freeze it. So that might save you a little bit of time during the Thanksgiving rush if you choose to do that. I would suggest using the springform pan, freezing it in the springform pan, filling the rigatoni only about halfway, and then topping with the bechamel sauce, and not cooking it until the day of. Then I ask myself, is it easy? And I would say, yeah, it's pretty easy. There's nothing too complicated about it. But then I would ask myself, is it quick? And no, I don't think it's necessarily quick because you do have to arrange the pastas. I mean, you could put this all in the bowl. You just lose like the impact of how it looks after it's baked. Then I ask myself, how much does it cost? And those 3 containers cost $7. So that's pretty good. I was happy with that. Granted, I do shop on sale, but that's how much it cost me to make. And if you try it, I hope you enjoy it.